Welcome back. How websites work. I just wanted to show you guys this, which is like it currently says like Trump administration, whatever, but you can easily change it to whatever you want it to say. Be on the website, everything's great, and you can do a lot of shenanigans with that. Okay. So now we will do how websites work. Perfect. Okay. Close this for now. Okay, so we're going to literally be making websites later, but what we're going to talk about right now is how a website comes to be on your computer, right? How does that entire process work? You type a URL, and somehow, like, part of the internet comes back to you, and what is that all about? So, I can zoom in a little bit, but also if you have the slides on your computer, you're welcome to go through it. I'm going to just I'll say what these, I know sometimes it's a little smaller than normal, but I'll say what the little arrows say as well. So, right, so we all start at your computer, right? And you basically say, I would like to go to ProPublica. And normally you know us as ProPublica.org or something, or maybe you go to Google and you type in ProPublica, but to go to Google, you just have to go to Google. Or if you have Google Chrome, it enables you to go to Google without even physically visiting their website. You just sort of type. No matter what, that first request that you send out goes out of your computer through the internet to all of these other computers, right? So I have a stack of computers up there, and what these computers represent is multiple things. Number one, you're all using the internet at ProPublica, so it goes through us, right? The ProPublica wireless system that you are all on, the ProPublica Wi-Fi, has filter abilities, right? So we do not filter any websites, but if we chose to do so, or many of your workplaces choose to do so, you will get a response that's like, you're not allowed to go here, or this website doesn't exist, right? It can actually tell you really whatever it wants to, but it has to pass through that filter first. Then it goes through your internet service provider, right? So once you're outside of ProPublica, it's like, who do we buy internet from? Let's say it's Verizon, it has to go through them. And for them, it probably goes to a bunch of different computers as it jumps around the country, trying to find what in the world does ProPublica.org mean, right? What is Sandra trying to do here? So now, what does not happen is it does not go and find ProPublica.org. The first thing it does, it says, what does ProPublica.org mean, and where is it actually hosted? And so what the computers will say back to your computer is, here's the IP address, right? It'll say what you meant was 123.456.78. And your computer was like, yes, I agree. Now let's go there instead, right? And so it'll repeat this process, and it'll say, never mind, go to this IP address. And this is not something that, if any of you are really into this, I can show you how to track what your computer is doing so you can see all the steps it's taking. Inside of that terminal that we made sure everybody had a while ago. But then it resends a request. It goes all the way back through ProPublica, through the internet service provider, through all these computers all over the country. And then it finally goes to some server in which that information is hosted, right? And so maybe it's on GitHub, maybe it's on Amazon, but it's somebody who physically owns servers in a physical place that has some sort of address to it, and that is accessed through the internet, right? So it's stored there. Most people pay a company to store their files on the internet. That's what a hosting service does. Okay, so it gets there, right? It's accessing. Now what it doesn't access is what I've drawn, which is it does not actually access any sort of visual information about your website, right? What it actually does is, instead of returning this, which is what we ultimately see, it returns a bunch of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's here's some files, right? And there's a bunch of code, and that's what you asked for, right? That's what we all agreed upon when we started this journey. We're going to give you a bunch of code. It goes back through all of these computers, right? It could be filtered out the other way, too, if we wanted. Computers, and then ISP, and then back to ProPublica. And then ProPublica finally, our internet, finally gives you all of that code. And it says, now draw it yourself. Have fun, right? Good luck, have fun. And that is when Chrome, or whatever browser you're using, then interprets all of that code that it gets back, and then displays it on the page for you. And it does it in order. It looks at the HTML first, and then from the HTML, it pulls in everything that the HTML tells you it needs. And that includes the CSS, that includes any JavaScript, it includes any images, or anything else that is connected. And so that's how the whole process kind of works. And as computers get faster and as the internet gets better and the infrastructure gets better, it all happens within like a blink of an eye. But that's why in the old days, like, it was so slow, right? Like, there's a lot that's going on here. And your sort of signal has oftentimes traveled all across the country to get back to you, all within that second once you're refreshing. But now, since our technology is so great, everybody's like super impatient, right? It's like, oh, it's like been 2 seconds. Like, why didn't this load? And that's valid in the sense that, like, from a user perspective, right? Like, we want fast service. And that makes sense. As people who make websites, we want you to have fast service, which is why the bigger the website, the bigger the files, the bulkier it is, the longer it takes to load, because it has to go through this cycle. This cycle, right? In order to get back to you and then to load. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, and depending on the speed of your computer, that also changes how fast everything loads. But ultimately, what's all that's being passed around is little bytes of information, and that is all saved in the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code that you write. And there's some meta information about that too, like this website was created on this day, the last time the file was edited at this time, all of that is in there. And there's also a track record of like all the different places that it pinged in order to get back to you. So, right, literally, you're just writing instructions for a website, right? For your computer to draw something. That's sort of like the general theme of coding, writing instructions, which can be really hard, right? And very specific. Which is why we're all going to do an extremely fun group activity. So, I would like one volunteer. Okay. Andrew, yes. Please stand up and go to the back of the class and face the whiteboard. And feel free to pick a marker of your choice, but you are not allowed to turn around. Okay. So you have to promise me that, though. Really hard. No turning around. Okay. Everybody else. So, give me just 1 second. So this is the website that you are going to tell Andrew how to draw. I'm going to make it a little easier by deleting a part of it. Oh, it's sad that they did that. I'll fix it. Okay, so here is what you are allowed to say. You can say anything that you want that is descriptive. You can say words. You can say letters, especially because I'm guessing that Andrew has not seen this version of this website before. So there we go. And you don't have to go beyond this line here. Okay? Does that make sense? So describe everything for him to draw from here on up, and from like none of the Chrome stuff, but just the website itself. And you can all work together and give him instructions, but he cannot turn around to look. Can you not tell him what the website is? You can. Like, you can say that. Like, that's fine. Yeah. Not a big deal. But go ahead.
All right. Top left corner. In black.
You can, the colors, you can let the colors go. That's totally fine.
I only have purple.
Top left corner says w3schools.com, and it's like the, title of the website.
Right underneath, draw a horizontal bar all the way to the end of the website.
Your menu bar. That's where she's from.
Yeah.
It says tutorials and then the triangle.
Like across
within the bar.
Yeah.
How many things are across?
There's three.
But they're all like right a little over.
Not
into the middle of your bar.
On the left. Yeah.
Flush left. Okay, so a tutorial.
It would extend.
Down triangle next to tutorial.
Like this.
It's like a drop down.
Oh.
Well, maybe you want to write the tutorials.
I don't know. Okay. Brief amendment. Andrew cannot ask questions.
Oh,
However,
sorry.
you can correct him.
And then a triangle pointing down
No, on the other side.
behind the S. Okay.
After that, it says references.
If you guys back there, if you want to sit up here, that's fine too.
Same.
Whatever's comfortable. Okay.
You should make your bar a little longer. Yeah, no.
And then examples next to references with the same downward triangle. Now you're going to flush right And there's a
in that
small.
same bar.
Magnifying glass.
There's a magnifying glass. Yeah.
What is that? A world?
And then a world next to it.
To the
On the
left.
left.
Globe.
And above that, in like smaller text,
But all caps.
it says the world's largest web developer site.
You might want to start towards the left.
Not gonna
You're not gonna, it's all caps.
The world's
The world
largest.
is that. Web developer site. Yeah, we should
Wait, it's a long
start
one.
it all the way.
Alright. Making progress.
Okay, so flush right, there's a big gray box that it's like 2/3 of the page.
That's a little too.
It's
Yeah.
more of a rectangle.
Horizontal.
Wide.
Yeah, the horizontal is
I would.
Like what you were drawing before, but just wider.
And not all the way up to but so like
Okay.
like right in the middle of the
That's good.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
It's good enough, I guess.
Alright, and then close out the box.
Yeah, finish that box.
Oh, it's like this.
Sometimes you will think that to yourself as you're telling the computer to do something. That's good enough, I guess.
Then
Draw a
the
smaller box
inside that.
like a TV. Yeah, TV. Draw a TV. And then at the top of your TV in that little border, it says HTML. All the way to the left.
Flush the yeah.
It's okay if you guys don't do the words in here, by the way. But I would do this thing.
It says HTML example : example is not all caps.
Title case, for example. Title case.
Such precision.
Colon.
Yeah. And then there's a little bar inside your smaller little rectangle.
little
On the
left
flush
side.
Flush left.
Just like darken
A skinny bar.
Darker.
Yeah, darken.
There you go.
Then there's a rectangle button in the bottom left corner. Left corner. There you go. Wait, not underneath that thing. Well,
It's like underneath your HTML.
like you were a TV button.
Yeah, it's in
Like-
line.
Yeah,
It's in line with your HTML.
And draw
Okay, so you need
a little bigger.
So you need to type in that box. Try it. Try it yourself.
And
Little
two
arrow.
arrows.
With two arrows pointing
Try it
right.
yourself. I think you're doing pretty good. There's an arrow inside.
So like the greater, what is it, the greater than?
2 arrows pointing to the
Two greater than signs.
Yeah.
That's good enough.
And then close the box.
And the I is lowercase.
Oh, the I is lowercase.
Alright.
So on the left part of your box, it says in big letters HTML.
On the on the screen.
We're done. We're done with the box. Yeah, like kind of in the a little to the right and a little down.
Center.
It's
Like,
now it's centered. Yeah,
Slide.
yeah, but not so in that column. And
Yep.
there you go. That's
HTML. And underneath that it says the language for building web pages.
And it's centered
straight
as well.
across.
And it's all in one line.
So start underneath tutorials. See where the T is? The language for building web pages.
You finished the HTML example. We were was silent. So like, oh man. It's like a little. Like we're all collectively exhausted of explaining this. I'm like, nice and love. It's up the T and the. There you go.
And web pages is 2 words.
Now underneath you're going to make 2 horizontal rectangles with words inside.
One of them says
So 2.
2 buttons, yeah.
So divide that large one into 2. Yep.
learn HTML, all caps on the left. And then HTML reference on the right.
You doing this? I think we got it.
I think that's everything.
Alright.
Yeah, I mean, unless you guys are unhappy with any part of it, you're free to make any additional adjustments.
I mean, it's all pretty, like, not accurate.
We should have started from the beginning saying that it should have gone all the way across because we ended up with the margins being way too tight. Like that HTML reference button and the box. Yeah.
Well, we didn't know how large Andrew would write.
Okay.
So we could
We didn't give it a
So I think, Andrew, it's safe for you to turn around now if you would like to see the website. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
A little tight.
Yeah, it's a little tight, but you know.
mobile.
Well, just very wide mobile. So what are your takeaways, both sort of as the person drawing and as the rest of the class?
It helped. I think it was. You were saying sentence case and stuff like that, right? That kind of helped.
Mm-hmm.
And then like specificity. Like a lot of times somebody would say something and I have like a bunch of questions about what exactly that meant. It was like draw a rectangle. And, like that could be any.
Right, like what are the questions you're asking in your mind when someone says draw a rectangle?
Dimensions?
Yeah, it's like, is it a, how big is it? How big is it? Is it like
A bar,
landscape or
yeah.
portrait, right?
Yeah.
Like, where's it supposed to start?
Yeah.
Where's it supposed to end?
And for the rest of the class, like what did you have to repeat a lot? What did you have to change your instructions for? Size. Mm-hmm.
I think it was helpful when we related it to things that you do know, like the TV screen or something like that. I mean, it's easier for us to explain to you. I don't know if it's easier for you to understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also, you don't know what Earth looks like.
The globe icon. Yeah, so what's interesting, right? Like a lot of the phrases that I heard you guys say include stuff like flush left, it's centered. There was one point where people were like, it's a little to the right, and then go a little down. Hilariously, that is also what we will be telling websites. Like, we want this thing a little to the right, and then a little down, and giving those like one dimension at a time instructions to make sure that it's where we want it to be. So basically, right, the point of this exercise is to show you that like you actually got to use extra shortcuts with Andrew because he's a human being that you won't get to with the computer. Like you're not going to be able to say like a TV screen, right, or like draw a globe, right? Like the computer will be like, what do you want me to do, right? Or draw a magnifying glass, right? So, but even with the ability to communicate like normal human beings, it was difficult to get Andrew to draw exactly what you wanted the first time around, right? And that sort of is like a very normal cycle, which is like you'll make a website, you know what it looks like in your head, and then you see it and you're like, oh, I got to move all of these things, I have to flush this left, I have to center the text, I have to change the caps. Like all of that is like a very normal course of interaction with you and the code. Okay, so what I want to show you guys now is sort of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and how they interact with each other sort of as a real example. And so we talked about sort of like the muscles, the bones, and like descriptions of how people look, but just want to show you real quick. Is it back up? Okay. Okay, so this is a very simple website that we created for the Data Institute, right? It is a picture of Ida B. Wells. It is a quote that she has said, and then her name underneath the quote to denote that she said it. And as you can tell on the left-hand side, there's sort of three boxes for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and only one of them is filled in, right? So again, this is the bare bones structure. It's all of the content, and I'm putting all the content in the page. Now, when I want to add CSS, right, we've talked about it'll change color, it'll change size, it'll change basically everything about the look and feel. So once we fill the CSS box in, like, it looks kind of nice. It's kind of like a nice website, right? Like, if that's all I wanted, like, That's actually pretty good.
From like 1995.
Yeah, but it's just so classy and simple, okay? So work with me here. But then, once we add JavaScript, right, there's like a little difference that happens. Now, when I go over immediately, I guess the text is bigger, which I didn't mean to do. Pretend like the text is not bigger. But nothing really happens until I interact with it. So what I'm going to do essentially is tap on the photo, and then we'll get like a new quote, right? And it'll just go back between those two because I was too lazy to find more than 2 quotes. But every time I tap, it will change. So that's sort of those 3 structures, and we're going to tackle them in order. It's going to go HTML, CSS, and then JavaScript. And in between, you'll also learn about like design and like how to make these decisions, right? Because you have all of the tools, but you also need some theory about like what is good design and how do you want to do that.